we've been stuck with the idea that there's only one form of democracy. For me, there's multiple forms of democracy. One looks at Mauritius. There is what we could call a social democracy in an African context. A welfare system on the one hand, economic democracy on the other hand, participatory. So in their own unique form, but the essence of it is a quality democracy. One can look, for example, at other types of, let's just say the Botswana case, where they use certain aspects of traditional African culture, the idea of the potluck, the idea that if you achieve, you have to debate and consult. Just bring those parts into African democracy in itself changes democracy on the continent, both from the political side, but also from the economic side. Now, I think what we've seen the last couple of years on the continent, for me, it's the last decade or the last 5 years, we've seen a wave, which I think we're only in the middle of that wave, where the formal political parties or the traditional political parties that we know in the African context, both the government parties, including the opposition parties, as well as the sort of the individual type of leaders that they govern without political parties, or the sort of strongman type of politicians in Africa, are being challenged in a way I think that hasn't been seen perhaps since the end of colonialism, when there was a wave of protest to end colonialism. We've seen it, and I think maybe in 2011 it started in North Africa, where youth groups, community groups, civil society opposed sitting dictators and seated them. So what we're seeing the last 2 or 3 years is sort of non-traditional type of activists. So what we normally think of activists is members of political parties, trade unions, civil society. So what has happened now is we've seen across the continent where you have musicians, rappers, young people who are mobilizing on a very mass level to either take out autocratic governments and so on. We've seen some successes. One of the most spectacular successes was probably in Senegal. Now there's successes outside North Africa, but in Senegal, where when President Wadi wanted to stay on for another term, where the opposition started with musicians, who started a mass mobilization to get him on. What we're now seeing in the DRC is happening, Cameroon is happening. So it is not a traditional civil society groups, not a traditional activism, but it's non-traditional type of activism, as people are now tired of the current civil society groups, the current political parties, and also the current traditional opposition parties. So for me, that's a really interesting phenomenon.
William, you spoke of multiple forms of democracy, and I think, knowing you, there's something that I think the panel is maybe not agreeing on, because indeed, the issue about, if we say that there is no one prescript for democracy, because indeed capitalism has managed to hijack a particular notion of it and is trying to export it. And so when we talk of conservatism on the right and socialism on the other extreme to the left, I mean, how do we navigate through those and still talk of democracy? Because, I mean, ultimately the question perhaps is, are you suggesting socialism isn't democratic as a form of practice, government, and or administration?
Okay, let me assume I'm William for now. But I think the question which you raise on the various types of democracy, what do we mean when we talk of democracy? I think it's a very valid question. Like I was actually reflecting on the death of Fidel Castro, and I've had huge heated arguments with many of my colleagues, particularly those who are on the left or who call themselves progressives, where they were extolling the life of Fidel. I mean, all they saw was a saint, a martyr. But beyond that, lived in the diaspora, has also given me another vantage point of seeing things differently, where I've engaged with Cubans who are in the diaspora, and not necessarily Cubans in the diaspora, but also engaged with Eritreans who have got a totally negative view of Castro. But even when I look at myself, I'm a beneficiary of Castro's policies in Cuba, because my ordinary level mathematics and science teacher were trained in Cuba, and they were quite brilliant. And we benefited from that as Zimbabwe. But on the flip side of the coin, there's the other. So the question which you are posing, actually, it's so difficult to say, okay, this is the answer, or this is the magic bullet, because it's a challenge which is currently facing democratic movements. To say, how do you deal with authoritarianism, whether from the left or from the right? But at the same time, when you want to say, like you said, that there seems to be, say, can we say democracy has got many variants? And as for me, I would not necessarily want to subscribe to the issue of Western democracy, African democracy, because those terms have got a history, particularly in this part of the continent where we are, where they have been abused in the name of tradition or in the name of Africanness, trying to maintain ourselves. And we have seen that what then comes out is not necessarily a democracy. But then I think this is where we need to look at democracy in terms of the betterment of the people's life. Looking at service delivery, like you have talked, the issue of local governments, how local governments has become central. Say, okay, if we are talking about democracy, are we talking about housing, transport, efficient public transport? Are we talking about health and sanitation, education? So this is the things which we need now to look to run. We should move away from neoliberal democracy, which we have been actually been fed with, which is mainly coming, like, particularly from the West. But we need to look at inclusive democracy, democracy that delivers and changes people's life from poverty to prosperity.
One of the issues we should look at, I think for me the first, is it politically inclusive? That's for me the first. Yeah. Are we governing in the interest of everyone? Can we hold people, and not after, after 5 years after elections and so on, and are we responsive as government within those, for me, within those framework, and maybe specifically within the African context, we know what are our challenges in the African context. Often democracy has been undermined based on, people would argue, well, actually, it is Western, so we are not going to implement it. Or argue, look, it is our culture or African culture are supposedly not democratic and so on. So how do we get out of that, the abuse of either the two types of abuses we can get out of it? The first abuse is to say we can't implement democracy in African contexts because you know what, it doesn't fit us for whatever reason, or I'm African. That's the first thing. And the second abuse in terms is how do we prevent people abusing actually democratic institutions? They say, well, our country is democratic. These are democratic. And then we use those institutions actually to be autocratic. And how do we also bring in ordinary Africans where they, we empower them and entrench their rights, their ability, to live in individual dignity, to get the public services they deserve, and so on, and to pay it equally, because that's also the other thing in the African context. People are not equal. You're either not equal because of social status, because of culture, because of religion. So how do we look at our democracy where everyone is equal?
I totally agree. Just to add, for me, democracy is democracy, plain and simple. There's no African democracy. It's the application, as I've said, and democracy is in the hands of the people. But it is how we now actually take the power and change the system.